public. In the wake of the attacks in Paris 13 days ago, there has been much discussion about what action should be taken to prevent the radicalization of young Muslims in Western societies. Deeyah Khan is an award-winning filmmaker who thinks that words can make a difference, that people can be persuaded to renounce their radical tendencies. She bases that on discussions she had for her new film, Jihad, a story of the others. It's the fruit of 18 months of talking to radicalised British Muslims. She told me about one of the central characters in her film, a man called Abu Muntazir.
He was, I would say, one of the first recruiters of British fighters who he inspired to go abroad to fight for the what he said the great cause of jihad on foreign battlefields, from Afghanistan to Burma to Kashmir to Chechnya, Bosnia, and throughout, starting in the 80s, appearing on all the various battlefields leading up to today. One of the reasons why I was so interested in him is that, today we talk about IS, we talk about foreign fighters, and what really struck me is that the recruitment of British Muslims or European Muslims is not something new. It's not something that's actually appeared as a result of IS, but actually goes back to the 80s and links back to men like Abu Muntazir. And that's why I was so interested in trying to explore his story and see if there are any connections between that and where we are today.
So what is his journey?
He was born in Bangladesh, witnessed a lot of violence and a lot of brutality in his early childhood, came to England with his family as a young man, as a teenager. And he says to me that at the age of 17, he wanted to join the PLO or wanted to seek out the Muslim Brotherhood. And the reason for that is that he felt marginalized in his own reality living in East London at that point. And he wanted to connect to a larger Muslim community that could relate to his suffering here in the West, but also connected to a more universal suffering or experienced humiliation of Muslims around the world. So from the early 80s, he became one of the first preachers and first recruiters in the UK. He went up and down the country setting up study circles in universities, also across some of the mosques in the UK, built a following very quickly and drove people's passions towards violent jihad.
What was it that turned him from someone who was looking for an outlet for his frustrations to actually becoming a recruiter, do you think?
It was wanting to contribute to the greater cause, to the larger cause. He wasn't satisfied just being a person that could contribute to the cause through his own life, but he felt obligated to drive as many young Muslims to this as possible. And what's interesting to me is that he says now, looking back at it, he was very consciously whipping up people's emotions and whipping up and really pointing at people's personal frustrations and people's personal feelings and articulating things that perhaps were difficult for most Muslims to speak to. I think he believed he was doing the right thing. I think he believes he was standing on the side of the oppressed Muslims.
And now, what is his situation?
Well, many years and many battles into this, very staunch, very clear black and white view that he had of the world, he eventually lost faith in not the religion, but in the religious expression of violent jihad.
He's still an imam.
He is still an imam. He is still very much practicing, very conservative still, I would say. But what he has now left behind is the belief that violence is a means of expressing your religiosity or your loyalty to other Muslims.
Well, let's have a listen to part of the film now where you ask him quite a pertinent question.
Do you think you should be forgiven? Do you feel you should be forgiven?
If I've done those things which have terribly upset people or hurt people, I should be forgiven. I should forgive others as well. Don't forget that for me personally, I had my elder brother killed. I have forgiven. I have truly forgiven. I will embrace, I will shake hands. I'll work with my murderers, or my brother's murderers, hand in hand. Even if my mother cries at my feet and says, "Son, what are you doing? He killed your brother." I will say, "No, Mum, I am a Muslim. I have forgiven."
When you then go on to ask him, have you forgiven yourself? He doesn't answer that question, does he? He cries, he composes himself, and And you ask again, how do you answer that? And he says, I don't know.
Yeah.
What kind of conclusion have you come to about him?
Well, I've spent a lot of time with him, and the conclusion that I came to is that he very clearly is unable to forgive himself. I think he is very, very clearly tormented by what he's done. I think when he sees the results and the reality of where we stand today, which is not directly affected by him, but he has been part of that development.
Does he feel responsible? When he looks at what happened in Paris, for other attacks around the world committed in the name of Jihad, does he feel responsible in some way?
I think to an extent he feels like he contributed towards the development of this movement in the West and where we stand today. And I think that's why he was unable to very clearly answer my question, because I think he does not forgive himself. I don't have any sympathy for men like this. What I realized in the making of this film is I entered it quite pessimistic. I actually am leaving it far more hopeful. One of the reasons for that is that I witnessed time and time again in the stories that I explored that change is possible. You can be that far gone and that extreme and still have the potential to return. I don't think he's in any doubt that what he has done is wrong. I think what he can't really cope with and doesn't know how to sort of grapple with is how should he face himself every day, knowing that he's done the things that he's done. And the thing is, they don't want us to view them as human beings. They want us to fear them.
Are you afraid, though, by exposing yourself in this way, talking to these people, putting yourself out there? You say it's a very personal project, but does it not instill any fear in you, what you've done? As I said, I left my country, Norway, when I was 17 years old because of men like this. So I used to be very afraid. I was deadly afraid, actually, which is why I was silent for so many years. I'm not afraid now. I have to say that when I was making this film, I actually only told my brother when I was making it. I didn't tell my parents. And when I showed it to my mother, she absolutely lost it. She was so furious with me. And she looks at me and she says, how dare you do this to me? How dare you sit with people like this and with men like this? How dare you put yourself at risk like this? Of course, I do get afraid at times, but that's what they want. They want all of us to feel afraid. They want us all to fear each other. They want us to fear them. They want us to hate each other. That is what gives them the fertile ground for the recruitment to their deadly cause. And that was the award-winning filmmaker Deeyah Khan. Now we hear a lot about people leaving